Today's video is on 5 unexpected man-made waves.
Number 5. Bruma Dam Disaster. On the 25th of January 2019, one of the deadliest disasters to ever happen by a failed dam took place in Brazil. This wasn't a dam like you may think, made from a thick structure of steel and concrete, but a mining dam used to hold waste from mining operations and made from sand and silt. There are 87 similar ones across Brazil, but at just after noon on that fateful day, something went terribly wrong at this one that's about 5.6 miles to the east of the city of Bruma. Its structural integrity weakened, and in a flash, more than 400 million cubic feet of toxic mud was released, which poured over the landscape. In its path was the mine's administrative area where the workers and their families lived, and tragically, at least 248 people died as a result. Beyond the initial losses, the impact of this disaster will be felt for a long time to come. The material contained mostly tailings, which is the rock left over from the mining process and is full of various metals. It's not known how much was subsequently released into the nearby rivers and soil, but it's thought that up to 200 miles of a nearby river could have been severely contaminated. It's likely to have consequences for the local ecosystems for decades, and the full extent of the damage will likely never be known. It was the second such disaster in Brazil in just 4 years, and has understandably put a focus on the other dams like it, and whether anything can be done to ensure it never happens again. Number 4. Hardtack Umbrella. Nuclear weapons are the most destructive man-made force on the planet, but a series of tests in the 1950s even surprised those who were most familiar with their destructive power. In the midst of the Cold War, the US commenced with Operation Hardtack, which during its first phase saw a total of 35 tests being conducted in the Pacific Ocean. One of these, known as the Hardtack Umbrella, involved the detonation of an 8-kiloton warhead at a depth of about 150 feet in a lagoon near Mutt Island. It created an underwater crater that was 20 feet deep and 3,000 feet across. But the biggest surprise was the gigantic wave that it formed. It engulfed ships that were moored nearby to monitor the explosion. It's just lucky that no one was on board, just in case the effects of the bomb reached that far. Number 3. Garbage wave. In November of 2016, residents of Shanghai's Chongming Island began noticing objects washing up on the beach, something that soon turned into a 100-ton wave of garbage that led to huge health concerns for large swaths of the city's population. The suspected cause was 2 ships that were docked upstream in the Yangtze River, whose crew were taking advantage of lax pollution laws to dump huge amounts of waste into the water. The problem, though, was that the current took all of this trash, which included medical tubes and needles, downstream to the island and into a reservoir. The island itself is home to 700,000 people, and the reservoir is one of the most important 4 fresh water sources for the entire city. Despite officials claiming the water was still safe to drink, it began to seem unlikely that this was truly the case. After the first wave had landed on the shore, the beaches were covered in garbage, and in some directions, the entire water surface was covered in debris. 40 workers were sent to clean up everything, but just as they had gotten control of the situation, yet another wave of waste appeared. Catheter bags, plastic bottles, and bags of all colors littered the area, and it took many months to finally clear everything. While authorities took steps to prevent this happening again, most people think it's only a matter of time until it does, unless laws are brought in to more strictly control the management and disposal of this type of waste. Number 2. The Great Molasses Flood. In Boston in 1919, temperatures started rising higher than usual, which set in motion a chain of events that would become a part of local folklore for decades to come. The Purity Distilling Company kept large stores of molasses, which they fermented to produce ethanol for use in producing alcoholic drinks. The previous day, they had received a new shipment and added it to the 50-foot tall and 90-foot wide tank. But the combination of this and the temperature rising higher than expected, the colder molasses inside the tank began to expand. At 12:30 p.m., people nearby say they felt the ground shake and heard a bang, and the tank ruptured. approximately 2.3 million gallons of molasses were released onto the streets and, with a density of 40% more than water, had a great deal of energy. The resulting wave was up to 25 feet tall and moved at up to 35 miles per hour. As it roared through the city, it tore steel panels out of position, flipped a streetcar, knocked buildings over, and flooded many others. People were caught in the wave, and 21 lost their lives. A further 150 were injured, and things were so serious that a makeshift hospital was set up nearby to tend to the casualties. The thick syrup in the streets made it especially difficult for rescue workers to search for survivors, and they gave up searching after 4 days. Many of the victims had been glazed within the molasses and could hardly be recognized, while some were swept into the harbor and were still being found many months later. The event resulted in a class action lawsuit being taken out against the company that owned the molasses storage tower, and the relatives of the victims received about $7,000 each, which is the equivalent to around $100,000 in today's money. Since it happened, stories abounded about the continuing smell of molasses around the city, and even more than 100 years later, residents claim they can detect an unmistakable whiff of it in the air on hot days. Number 1. The Waterpark Tsunami. Water parks around the world have a variety of attractions such as lazy rivers and water slides, but one of the most popular features is always the wave pool. Crowds of people swim in the water while controlled artificial waves make them bob up and down, but occasionally things don't always go to plan. In August of 2019, the wave pool at the Yulong Shuyan Water Park in northern China was full, as it was every other day in the heat, and people were enjoying the cool water. There were people on inflatables and people with their families, none of whom were prepared for what was coming next. As wave after wave passed, something went wrong with the machinery so that, instead of generating a calm wave, it produced a wave pool's version of a tsunami. Their joy turns to terror as the waves gushed through the confined space and sent people flying in all directions. They landed hard, back in the water and on paving stones outside the pool, and some were pulled underwater by the strong current. As the video shows, people start to push each other out of the way in an attempt to avoid the approaching wave, but many had no choice but to let it hit them and to hope for the best. Luckily, no one died, but at least 44 people were injured, many of whom suffered bloody noses or broken ribs. Despite claims on Chinese social media that the operator of the machine was drunk at the time, the owners have strongly denied this. They claim that it actually happened because of a power cut that damaged the machinery, and needless to say, it was immediately closed for repair, and protocols have now been put in place to keep strict control over how large the waves can become. Honorable mentions. Superbank, Australia. Surfers spend their lives searching for the perfect wave, but it turns out that one of the best in the world was man-made and completely done by accident. It's called the Superbank and is on the Gold Coast of Australia. On a good day, the wave stretches a massive 1.22 miles, full of barrels and ramps, but it hasn't always been that way. In 2000, the local council decided to make alterations to the mouth of the nearby Tweed River to make it safer for larger boats. To do this, they embarked on a massive dredging program that saw as much as 11 million square feet of sand being moved to an area further down the coast. Depositing so much material altered the place at which the waves broke, and the Superbank was formed. In the span of 2 years, the geography of the region has been dramatically changed, and as well as opening the river up for cruise ships, tourism has now boomed thanks to the influx of people looking to ride the Superbank. Cruise ship engines. This video from 2016 shows that waves don't have to be huge to have a dramatic effect. The incident happened in the Sicilian port of Messina when a 134,000-ton cruise ship was leaving its berth. As the engines began to churn the water, a miniature tsunami swept across the nearby marina and destroyed a concrete pillar along with a number of private vessels. Oblivious to the destruction being caused in its wake, the ship continues to steam on to its next port of call. The damage caused by the wave cost an estimated $275,000 and left the owners of the boats in the marina wondering whether they should look for somewhere else to moor their prized boats in the future.
I hope you all enjoyed today's video, narrated by Zach this time. Be sure to subscribe for more and check out some of our recent uploads.